Welcome to episode 60 of the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I am a board-certified sports dietitian and runner based in Santa Cruz, California. I provide virtual nutrition services to teenage and adult athletes of all abilities, and I host this podcast as a fun side project to demonstrate that there is no one-size-fits-all nutrition approach towards optimal health and sports performance. I do this primarily through my nutrition profiles featuring high-performing athletes, as well as interviews with my sports dietitian colleague on various nutrition topics. My guest today is John Kelly, an elite ultrarunner, triathlete, father of four, yes, you heard that right, 4 children, and an engineer. He is perhaps best known as one of the few finishers of the infamous Barkley Marathons. In 2017, he was the 15th and, until today, the most recent finisher in the race's history. It just so happens that the 2023 Barkley Marathons occurred this week, culminating in 3 finishers tonight, and I'm recording this intro on Thursday, March 16th, just for reference. John completed all 5 loops yet again, making him the 3rd runner in history to finish the race more than once. And in case you're wondering, we recorded this interview on February 23rd, about 3 weeks before this year's race, and I promise you that the timing of this episode being published a day after the finish is pure coincidence. So much so that I'm re-recording this intro very last minute before my planned publish tomorrow. And as you can hear, my voice is really shot from a bad cold. So don't worry, I do not sound like this during the interview. But enough about the Barkley Marathons, as John's athletic accomplishments extend far beyond this race, of course. He has completed many Ironman events, including 2 finishes in the Kona Ironman World Championships. John has run numerous road marathons, including a 2:26 last year at CIM. So in other words, he's very fast. He's a Tennessee native, but lived in the UK for a while. And during his time there, he won the Spine Race in 2020, a brutal winter ultramarathon that follows the 268-mile Pennine Way. He also broke a 31-year-old record on the Pennine Way, winning an award for the men's 2021 FKT of the Year. He was the first to complete the Grand Round, a combination of the UK's 3 big running rounds, while biking between them, and there's an awesome short film on this that I'll link to in the show notes. This past summer, he placed 10th at Hardrock, and the list just goes on and on. Oh, and did I mention, by the way, that he works and has 4 children too, so, he's not busy at all. We chat all things nutrition, as we always do in these athlete nutrition profiles, and I think you'll really enjoy this one, especially if you were following along all of the Barkley coverage and you just wanted a little bit more. So without further ado, here is my interview with ultrarunner John Kelly. Hey, John, welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. How's it going today?
Going pretty well. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. I know I only have you for an hour, so we're going to get right into it. I like to start things out by digging into your nutrition roots. So what kinds of memories do you have surrounding food and meal times while growing up in Tennessee?
That's a tough one. In Tennessee, we're big on Little Debbie cakes and Goo Goo clusters. Outside of that, Cracker Barrel was that's another Tennessee product, and I think in general that the kinds of foods served there are pretty reflective of the kinds of foods I had around the table growing up, whether at home or at family or church functions or other things that you might go to. So
Yeah.
your kind of traditional hearty down home type of meals.
Yeah, and I mean, you were pretty active as a kid, and I know you also ran in high school. Did any of that change as you became more active, or that kind of all stayed the same?
It stayed the same. I think as I got older and I kind of took on more responsibility for my own eating and my own meals at times, I think I largely defaulted to what was simple and what I could quickly make, so that involved a lot of Kraft 3 cheese, mac and cheese, a lot of Tony's frozen pizzas. Well, once I got into college, it went farther down that route in terms of the quick and easy meals there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really, it's so interesting to look at your your whole athletic journey. When you just take you zoom out and you look at the whole thing, and you have a great blog, of course, Random Forest Runner. So you have all the information there. I think actually you're my only guest I've had so far that has such a prolific blog. So it's so much information, which is fantastic. And you include lots of nutrition stuff in there. But kind of, looking at your whole career so far, you go through college and grad school, as you say, running pretty much fell off the radar. And then you hit this turning point in your journey when you're hiking out west and you get inspired to run again. And you sign up for the Marine Corps Marathon in 2013. So, and then from there, it just expands into this whole, where we're at now, basically. But you go on all these windy roads with triathlon and all this stuff. So I'm really excited to chat about all of that and how nutrition kind of weaves in throughout that. But I guess to start, so you talked about the frozen pizzas and the craft cheese. I guess that's kind of like college and grad school and all of that. As you started to get into these early marathons and everything, yeah, how did the everyday and performance nutrition change as you became more competitive? Getting into these marathons and ultras and triathlon.
Yeah, so there was a lot of exploration on that, and there's a lot of information and a lot of misinformation out there, and when you're getting started on these things, it's easy to grab at things and easy to see something and think, oh, that's what I have to do. And so there were periods, especially in the triathlon days, of kind of diving down the race weight rabbit hole of I need to eat these things, I need to be at my race weight. That there is actually there's a I don't know if the picture made it onto my blog or not, but going into my second year at Kona, there's a picture of me before a swim that
I saw that picture. You look very
I'm
small.
Skin and bones. I was
yes,
on the carrot stick diet for a while.
Yeah.
And it's so that has been a lot of exploring different things in terms of what is best, whether there's some sort of specific types of diets or specific types of foods, target protein levels, target weights, all of this, trying to optimize all that, and eventually circling back to just even if it does shave a few seconds off of my time, it's not worth it to me. It's not enjoyable. I don't think it's healthy, and now I'm back to just kind of, I eat when I'm hungry and I eat what looks good, and there's some moderating myself around that, for sure, because I am the kind of person that I could live off of Little Debbie cakes if I thought that that was long term feasible. But for the most part, it's much more eating when I want and what I want.
Yeah. And I want to dig into that and maybe break it down just into smaller chunks, like maybe starting with those early marathons in 2013 and 2014. And you can see your time, and I'm sure this has as much to do or largely to do with training as well, but you can see the time that you start out with and it just slowly chips away down. And then, you're getting into all the triathlons and the ultras. And it's worth noting, by the way, that, I mean, when we're talking about you're getting into ultra, one of the first ones you do is the Barkley Marathons, which of course you finished in 2017 after 2 previous attempts. And then you're doing, not just triathlon, but you're doing all of these Ironmans, and Kona, of course, you did twice. So, I'm kind of curious, if you remember any details about how it shifted, and particularly maybe my point of interest is you're doing so many different things. Again, if you looked at the race results page or your results page, it's just such variety. You have road marathons, you have trail stuff, you have the triathlon. Are there huge differences in your nutrition strategies or the things you're using from one to the next? How did that evolve?
During the events themselves, or just every day?
Yeah. We'll break it out. Let's start with the events themselves. I'm curious, how your nutrition strategies differed between the many events you were competing in.
Yeah, it was definitely different during the events, largely just based on duration. Doing something like a marathon, I'll get away with a few gels. Ironman, a few gels, maybe plus a bar or two thrown in there, like a energy bar, which I've always struggled a bit with eating during these types of events. So I mean, I do remember there were times where I certainly didn't get in, even in those shorter events, as much as I should have. I remember the Lake Placid Ironman, where I actually did pretty well. I think I had one gel for the entire duration of the marathon
Wow.
leg.
Wow.
But then when you start to look at ultras, they're much longer duration. I'm looking at more and more kind of normal food. I mean, I'm missing actual meals throughout the day, sometimes multiple days, and I need to uh, be providing for not only what my body needs for the activity, but just its normal day-to-day upkeep as well. So there's a lot more of what you would think is normal, non-athletic foods involved there.
Hmm. What kinds of things do you typically reach for in an ultra?
So I mean, there are still your kind of traditional um, athletic fuels. I'm been working with Tailwind for the past year or so, which has been very good for me. I mentioned that I've always had kind of issues
Hmm.
with getting enough down and getting the right types of things down. So having that in liquid form has been huge for me. I started working with a company in the UK called Supernatural Fuel, which that actually evolved from me on some of my multi-day attempts over there. I stole some of my at the time infant daughter's kind of squeeze pouches, like Ella's
Hmm.
Kitchen stuff, where they make these
Yeah.
little pureed baby food pouches, and that was great. And so Supernatural, I kind of think is baby food pouches for athletes or for adults.
Hmm.
That it's a similar type of pureed thing. Um, and then shorter things. I went to the marathon, back to the marathon in the fall, and the Martin gels worked well for
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Which was interesting, as they were actually like what I think of a gelatin-like substance rather than a gooey,
Yeah.
sticky type substance.
Yeah.
But then also, I am going to be throwing in like Little Debbie cakes, chips, a random assortment of things. I mean, I have kind of fuel plans for things where I do like the Wainwrights, which is 5+ days, and I have it broken down into like crunchy and soft and salty and sweet and these different
Mm.
things that I might get a craving for. And your body actually is quite good at getting a craving for what it actually needs. If it needs more sugar, or if it needs more salt, or if it needs more protein. And so
Hmm.
I have this variety of things that cover all of those bases, and then coming into the support points, particularly if I'm about to go down for a nap, I'll have some pasta or some rice pudding. I love rice pudding for these types of things. It's just it's amazing. It's the right texture. It's the right kind of nutrition that I need. I like the taste. It's not overpowering. I found that that's something that works quite well for me.
Yeah. Is that something you make yourself or do you buy it?
No. So I've actually, this is one of the UK things that I need to replace now that I'm back in the US. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if they have it in grocery stores here. I know I've seen it at like Mexican restaurants, but I do need to see if I can find a similar type thing that it just in the UK it came in like little cups, like what you would eat a yogurt out of,
They
for
do
example.
have that. I think it's called, I want to say it's called Cozy Shack or something, Cozy something. I might be totally making this up, but I definitely know that they about the brand name. But I know um, I'm out in California, so they have like Safeway. That's like one of the big supermarkets, but I'm sure they carry something similar where you're at, but yeah, they're like little cups and they have like chocolate pudding and rice pudding and this and that, so they definitely sell that. You can totally get that.
Okay, great.
That's a great idea. I actually haven't thought to use rice pudding. That's the fantastic. This is one of the
Yeah.
benefits to doing these interviews. I always get great ideas from people. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
I see that here, Cozy Shack rice pudding
Oh, you got it? Nice.
available at Walmart. In the UK,
Yep.
it was Ambrosia was the brand name.
Yeah, I actually lived in London for 4 years, and yeah, I'm curious to hear. Well, we'll get to that point about little chit chat about UK, but actually, let's just chat about it now. How are you finding kind of getting back into the US? Because you moved, was it last year or when did you come back?
Yeah, we came back last summer. So I kind
Okay.
of had my Wainwright's run was in Maine, or
Yep.
sorry, in May. Kind of my last big thing over there, and then we came back, went out to Hardrock, and then finally really arrived here at home in August.
Mm-hmm. And how are you finding that transition? Because I know what my transition was like when I mean, it was a long time ago, but I remember coming back to the US and just going into a grocery store and being like, whoa. But how has it been coming back?
Yeah, so it's been good. So lots of uh, things in this area where we moved to, new things to explore, and it's fun to watch the kids get reintroduced to things that maybe they don't remember all that much or at all,
Hmm.
and yeah, just differences in the town where we live and the food that's available and the activities that are available. So there are things that I'm definitely glad to be back to, and there are things that I definitely miss as well.
What do you miss? I'm curious.
Are we still talking food, or are we talking in general?
Either, because we can talk about both. We focus on nutrition, but we often, take little side tracks.
Yeah. Well, I mean that ambrosia rice pudding would be one thing. There was also something that they had there called squash or cordial. That is
Yes.
just super concentrated fruit juice. That funnily enough, when I first moved there, went into the office and I saw the bottle that said double strength. I thought, oh, that means you dilute it, or you add 2 to 1 water and squash. And after drinking that for a while, one of my office mates looked at me and he said, that looks kind of dark. What are you doing there? And he explained to me that single strength is supposed to be diluted like 4 to 1, and double strength is like 11 to 1.
Oh,
So I'd been
God.
drinking like this super concentrated fruit juice the whole time, but I stuck with it actually for the most part. And sometimes on these long things, uh, especially depending on how the weather is, I can get cotton mouth real bad,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just take a straight shot, full strength, not no water at all, just a straight shot of that, and it would
Mm.
just kick my taste buds right back into gear, wake them up. I found that quite effective.
Oh, that's
But
really interesting.
outside of food, the big thing I miss for sure is just the network of public rights of way. Of
Yes.
there's so much over there in the way of public footpaths, and up in Scotland, you even have the right to roam. Pretty much anywhere you can go anywhere, as long as you're not like up looking in someone's front window of their house or something. But that took a while to get used to, of just going for runs and cutting across farmers' fields and by their barns and up their drives, and but it was just incredible to be able to fully explore the land like that and know that I could get from any 2 points on these footpaths. Whereas
Yeah.
here, I have incredible places to run here, but they're all kind of isolated trail systems, and getting between two of them, or more than connecting any of them for the most part, usually involves a stretch running on a highway of death that just is
Yeah.
impossible. There's no shoulder, the speed limit's 60 miles an hour. Not the smartest place to run.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband and I always say that one of the things we missed the most about living in London was our ability to leave so easily and just get to all these amazing places because we lived in New York City for a long time, and of course California has lots of awesome things too. And you're in North Carolina, is that right?
Yeah, Western North
Okay,
Carolina, up
Western
in the
North.
mountains.
Awesome. Well, circling back to the nutrition stuff, you were saying that you're struggling to get enough in, and it's definitely, kind of mind-boggling thinking about you only taking one gel in the marathon portion of an Ironman. Like that's crazy. But I use Tailwind too, so I love Tailwind. But I've heard on other podcasts that you struggle with GI stuff. So was that the issue getting it in, that you were just having some GI issues, or what was kind of the struggle with getting more food in or more nutrition in?
So I think there have been a number of things for me throughout my life on that. Going back to high school, even, it was almost guaranteed, and the same was true for my brother. So I assume there's some sort of genetic component here. After
Hmm.
every hard interval workout or every race, we would be puking.
Oof.
Like, it was almost 100%. And kind of the theory from the coach at that time was, well, lactic acid builds up and y'all just keep running instead of responding to that and stopping. I don't know how much it's that versus stomach. My dad has always had stomach issues as well, acid reflux and the like. And so there was that. And then early on, I think it was just not knowing what I was doing. Like my first attempt at Barkley, I was still early on and thought, I'd live off these gels and energy bars, just like shorter things. And, um, you thought the one gel during a marathon was bad. I think that year, my first year at Barkley, I finished a fun run, which is 3 loops. Took me 33 hours or so, I think. And so that
Hmm.
last loop was, I don't remember. I'd estimate it was 12 plus hours. I don't know that I had more than one gel during that.
Oh,
Um,
man,
but
that's crazy.
it's a much lower intensity, so you're much
Sure.
more able to to work off of burning fat. And I don't know if I've just always had like been able to effectively metabolize and use fat as a fuel source, and that's why I'm able to kind of get away with some of these things where things haven't gone well for me on the fueling front. There's my first uh, time getting the record on the Pennine Way, which was about 64 hours uh, across 260 miles in the UK. There was one of my support crew was a doctor, and um, she kind of is pretty confident that I had an ulcer, like an actual ulcer during
Mm.
that. And so I hardly ate the second half of that. Um, and
Did you have an
then
ulcer? Like, did you get diagnosed with something, or you didn't really find out?
the symptoms were pretty, especially when I gave her the full picture after the fact. Um, the symptoms were pretty convincing, but
Mm.
it's not something that like they weren't going to run a scope on me
Sure.
at that point to confirm that I had one.
Mm.
Um, but then that kind of progressed, and I think more recently, as recent as a couple, I guess about 2 years ago, is where it kind of peaked for me, and I kept having some of these issues, and not only during running, but outside of running, and it got to the point where I was having these symptoms that you go to WebMD, and which is always dangerous.
Yeah.
You're always like 3 steps away from cancer with any
Yeah.
symptoms that you search on WebMD, but it was very much mirroring heart problems,
Mm.
and so, but it turns out it was just bad, like acid reflux or GERD
Hmm.
that I was having, and so I tried to test for some food intolerances. I still kind of think I have an intolerance to sesame, and I avoid that now. Just a more so a better safe than sorry thing.
Hmm.
And I've cut out things that I used to love, like hot sauce. And little by little, I think that I'm in a much better spot now. I don't have these issues outside of running. I feel that I've been able to fuel better during running, and so again, I guess that was a very long path to answering your question there, and essentially saying that I've had these problems throughout my life, but I don't think that it's been the same problem
Mm.
for that entire time.
No, but this is exactly the kind of stuff I'm really curious about because GI issues are just so common, especially in endurance athletes. And I know among my own private clients, like GI stuff of all kinds, whether it's reflux in running, reflux in every day, whether it's nausea or, like diarrhea or whatever it is, like it's just there's some issue amongst so many people. So, I think it's really helpful for people to hear about how, what you've experienced and how you've dealt with it. Just always good to hear that they're not alone and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
it sounds like it's improved. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say that the one other thing that I'll add to that I think has been a cause at times, and is for something for people to keep in mind, is this kind of brain stomach connection where just
Mm.
our bodies are programmed that if we eat something and then later we get sick, our brain says, no, don't eat that again. Like, that's how at one time we avoided eating poison berries and whatnot. And it doesn't matter if that was actually the cause of getting sick. The brain sees the correlation and just instantly says, like a few weeks ago, we had our normal Friday evening pizza. And then later that night, I finally got a stomach bug that my kids have been passing around, and it was awful. And for like a couple weeks, my brain was like, "No, dude, you can't eat pizza," which is terrible because it's like my favorite food in the world.
Yeah.
But I've seen that happen to me throughout my endurance career, where these fuels that initially worked for me and worked well for me, inevitably, at some point, I would get sick during a race because of the race, not because of fuel. But then my brain would make that connection, and later on, even the thought of pulling that thing out of my pack would make my stomach get queasy and tight.
Mm. Yeah. And I saw you used to use a lot of hammer products. Is that kind of what, like, have you moved away from that? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Uh, that's partially
Hmm.
the reason there. Those at one time worked extremely well for me. I think that there is a bit of that involved, but also just a shift in the kinds of things that I'm focusing on. The
Hmm.
past few years, I've focused much more on these uh, ultra long distance multi day things, where to be
Hmm.
honest, I just don't use much in the way of gel.
Yeah.
Um, and so and there are other, Hammerhead, a product that worked great for me called Perpetuum, but
Yep.
it's one of those things where once you mix it, you kind of have to drink it soon,
Yeah.
especially if it's warm outside.
Mm.
And so again, these things where I'm out there for multiple days at a time, sometimes like many hours between support points. That's not something I can necessarily do.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt your listening, but can I ask a huge favor? If you're enjoying this episode, please take a minute and head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening and rate and review the show. This will help the show grow, and since it's currently unsponsored and I do all of this for free, I would very much appreciate your support in spreading the word. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the episode. So other than Tailwind, are you taking any other like engineered products? Are you still doing any bars or anything like that? Or it's really just like Tailwind and food?
So the Supernatural Fuel
Oh
company
yeah, that
in
too.
the
Yeah.
UK,
Hmm.
which I use those primarily on longer things. They're not as calorie dense as some other things, both in terms of weight or volume.
Hmm.
Um, and so like when I was doing the marathons, I used the the Mortons. I really don't know how to pronounce that.
I call him Morton. Yeah, I don't know.
Morton.
I think
Okay.
Morton. Who knows? I might not be saying it right either.
As long as we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we know what you're
Um,
talking about.
but yeah, so I would say, and again, I liked those. I think that I will use those in some things going forward. I also apparently still get a discount with them because I used to be an Ironman.
Mm,
So that was neat to find out. But
awesome.
yeah, so those are the three that I would say are kind of specifically for endurance sports that I still use.
Are you doing any additional salts? Like, I think I saw you used to use Endurolites, or are you doing any other
Well,
salt
well,
products?
that's the great thing for me with Tailwind. It takes care of that side of the
Yeah,
equation for me. I
totally.
think that sometimes in the past, like when you're out there for as long as I am, and your brain is getting as addled as mine does, and you kind of you lose the ability to focus on all of these different things and keep track of all of this different stuff. And so there would be times where I would kind of just lose track of or forget to deal with electrolytes.
Mm,
And so kind of the fewer things that I have to think of, the more I can focus my brain's limited remaining bandwidth on moving forward.
yeah. Um, in terms of your GI issues, did you ever think that it might be in part due to like stress or anything like that? I mean, it really is mind-boggling that you're able to train and compete at such a high level. You have 4 young kids, you have a full-time job, and then at that time, like back when you're doing like Ironman, I mean, again, you were doing like the highest level of Ironman and then one of the hardest ultras out there pretty much at the same time or within close proximity. I'm just curious if you ever thought that was a part of it, or if that hasn't been an issue, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that anyone else has done the Barkley Kona double.
No, that is
Um,
insane. That is a very unusual combo.
but yeah, I mean, I absolutely think stress is a big part, particularly the past couple years. I'd say my levels have been much higher with the move to another country and back, and kind of in the critical stages of building a startup during that time, and all the volatility associated with that. So I think that's definitely a big contributor, um, as as well as potentially just other things in life, like maybe not getting enough sleep, is what
Yeah,
my body needs.
yeah, yeah. It's I'm reminded of Mike Ordian, and that's probably just because I mean I've had him on my show a couple times, but also I just listened to him on Rich Roll, so I'm that's kind of right in the front of my mind. But just that juggle of like, performing as an athlete at the highest level and having a family and having a full-time job and just juggling all these responsibilities, and sleep often is not where it's supposed to be. Um, I mean, it's one of those things that you admire greatly, and you're also like, how does that person do that? So it's yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if in some ways like some issues manifest themselves in the GI, because it is very connected, that brain gut connection that you were talking about, but also in the sense of like the things you're really feeling deeply.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I don't know.
and that's not for me. That's in no way some badge of honor. I feel like you have people out there who are, oh, I only got 3 hours of sleep, and then I did this and that and this other thing, and no, like I I I try to get to take care of that, and to do as well as I can. Unfortunately, it's just not feasible sometimes, and all of these things to me are, I'm an engineer, and I look at it as a constrained optimization problem. And no, I'm not going to be the best possible athlete as I could be if I were able to focus on it full time. But I do the best given the other demands in my life, and sometimes that's going to be more stress than what my body can handle. And I think in particular in 2021, just 50 miles into Tour de Jean, I ended up with rhabdo, which
Oh yeah, I
was
saw that.
which was
Oh,
scary, and like just a head scratcher for me. I had done things that was much longer, much harder, higher elevation, hotter, like all of these individual variables. I had done things that were much harder. Um, but when you add all of these things together, combined with stresses in my life, like our startup had just that very week closed our Series B fundraising round. When all of these things add up, it just kind of creates this perfect storm sometimes that doesn't end well.
Yeah, and that's where it's like whenever I talk about nutrition, we always talk about the sleep and the stress and all the other things going on in life because it is all connected and you can't expect to be your best self as an athlete or recover the best or perform the best or do all that if like you can't just like even if your nutrition is so dialed in, it's like all kind of irrelevant if the other things aren't like there too. It could just sabotage you. But yeah, I mean, I look at all of the things you've done, and again, I was looking at kind of your main results page and kind of reading through all of it, and you list it out chronologically, and it's really is fascinating to watch it all unfold. And as you go through all these different types of events and different sports, and I think somewhere like you wrote you're a water skier, like you're hiking, like there's so much going on, which is fantastic because you have all these passions. But I imagine it must be challenging because you have all these passions and you're balancing against all these responsibilities. So you kind of have to figure out where to focus yourself, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I basically I have my family, I have my job, and I have running, and I want to do as best as I possibly can at all of those. And if I tried to add something else, then I simply couldn't. And for some people, that's fine. Like maybe some people prefer to do 10 things at 50% each rather than 3 things at 90 to 100%.
Mm.
That's a personal choice that we all have to make. I've made the choice to focus on those things. Funnily enough, though, you mentioned water skiing. I did basically get back to running because when I moved to DC, there was nowhere to water ski. I was a pretty good slalom skier. I'd been with a club up in Pittsburgh at grad school, and I'd kind of been mowing their island and maintaining it in exchange for rides on the slalom course. But then at DC, there was nowhere to ski. So
Mm.
I'd like to
Yeah.
get back to it at some point, but you know,
Yeah.
boats are expensive.
Yeah. Totally. Um, I'm curious. So you did Hardrock, this past summer. You finished 10th, I believe, and um, I think I heard you say that wasn't, or you didn't really live up fully to your potential, or didn't feel like it was your best race. And again, from a kind of nutrition standpoint, I'm curious how you viewed how it all went down and what the challenges were, anything you learned about it. Um, yeah.
So after the fact, with sufficient time to really think about it and talk to other people, I think part of my big problem was I didn't hydrate enough.
Mm.
Um, and so essentially what happened was I got altitude sickness
Hmm.
pretty bad, and I we gone out there for 3 weeks before the race and to help me get acclimated to it, and I do think that helped a lot, but at altitude you need more water,
Yep.
and I didn't account for that. And there was also one climb in particular where it was exposed. It was the heat of the afternoon, and there weren't any water sources like I was expecting slash hoping there to be for me to refill. And that was kind of the tipping point for me where I started to struggle just a bit. And then going up the next climb and then up to Handy's Peak, the 14,000-foot peak on the course, just, I would take a few steps, double over and start hurling, take a few more steps, double over, and
Ugh.
just hurling
So
or
rough.
drive heaving all the way up and down. And then at the aid station on the other side of Handy's, I was there for like 4 hours. I couldn't so much as get down a sip of water without it coming back up. And that was the main concerning thing for me, when I couldn't even get down water.
Yeah.
So I was there until I could drink a little bit of water, and then I continued on, and I actually I ran pretty well from there. I kind of think of my Hardrock as like a 100K followed by 4 hours of resting and puking, and then like a 70K after that.
Lovely.
And so, yeah, it's definitely again, it's one of those things where, like, if you look at the outcome by itself, then no, I'm not happy with that. But if you put the outcome in the context of, look what I dealt with, and look how I handled that, and look what I still came away with, when you put it in the actual context of these constraints that I had, and these obstacles and challenges that I faced, it's one of the outcomes I've had that I'm most proud of, and I learned from that. Next time I'm up at altitude, I'll try drinking a lot more.
Yeah. Was that really, I mean, I know Tour de Géant has some altitude, and of course you got wrapped up, but were those two kind of like the main experiences you've had at altitude so far?
Yeah. So I've done Tour de Géant. Well, I finished it once, and then I got rhabdo the second time.
Got it. Okay.
I also had my first ever DNF in a normal race. So like not Barkley.
Not Barkley, yeah.
Was Ronda del Sim, which was in the tiny country of Andorra, sandwiched between France and Spain there in the Pyrenees. And so I can't remember what altitude I got up to there, but that was, again, one that didn't end well for me, and I'm mainly disappointed that the race got killed by COVID, and I will never be able to go back and redeem myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, do you feel like you want to seek out more races at altitude due to these experiences, or is it something that you don't enjoy as much?
I look at that as a novel challenge, one that I want to figure out how to overcome. When I went and did triathlon, swimming was a very novel challenge for me. I took that on for a few years and decided I still hated swimming and I'd rather do other things.
Yeah.
So moved on. But I enjoy something I enjoy about ultras is simply how complex they are, how many variables there are, how there's really never a perfect race. There's always something that you can go back and do better. And it's impossible to really predict the outcome ahead of time because of how many variables there are. So the altitude is one variable that I haven't really mastered or really been successful with at all. So I would like to figure that out, whether from, again, acclimating beforehand or hydrating better or another nutrition strategy, or I've been one of the people that I passed near the end of Hardrock was the CEO of Hypoxico. So I've been talking with him about how I might be able to turn my little office cube, my home office cube, that I spend most of my day in, into an altitude room, and see if that can help me out a bit. But yeah, it's something that I've never done well with, and I'm also hoping that living where I am now in Boone, I'm at about 3,300 feet, which is by no means high altitude, but it's certainly better than, I think, where I lived in the UK was at like 16 feet, not 1,600, just 16.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm literally like at sea level over here, so can see the ocean. I'm wondering, you were talking about kind of how complex ultras are, and how intriguing they are in that way. And I wonder, is that why even after being one of, the very few finishers of Barkley, that you have been going back?
It's one of the reasons. Barkley to me is almost never, well, not almost, it just is never the same race or the same experience. I mean, sure,
Mm,
it's in the same place, but even beyond the course changes, there's just different weather that you encounter, different start time, um, different people that are out there with you. And so it never quite feels the same. And even being a looped course, none of the loops feel the same because you're doing them at different times of in different directions at different times of day
hmm
in weather that Tennessee in March, like you can be. I remember one time it was gallon jugs of water were frozen solid blocks of ice, and then 12 hours later on the next loop, I'm going up that climb and just baking in the afternoon sun. And so there's a lot of volatility, a lot of unpredictability, and a lot of variables there.
mm,
And that's definitely one thing that keeps it fresh and keeps it appealing to me. But at the same time, also, that's my home. And now at this
yeah.
point, like I kind of love. I'm at the point with the race where I still have the motivation to finish, but I'm not like super stressed or anxious about it. It's not all consuming of my life. And I look forward to welcoming a bunch of my friends to my home and taking them out into the woods and showing them around. It's just a great experience for me.
Are you doing it this year?
That's the plan.
Awesome.
So should be a fun year out there.
And so in terms of the nutrition, because you have like the aid station at the gate, right? Is that right?
hmm
And then you have nothing for the whole loop?
Uh,
Or how's that
just
work?
just a couple of water drops. Yeah.
Water,
So
okay,
you
water
have to,
drops.
as far as uh, food goes, you have to carry everything with
hmm
you for the entirety of the loop.
And so that's roughly, you said 12 hours ish?
It can vary quite a bit, but the first loop in good conditions, if with a daytime start, could be as little as 8 hours. And then later on, if conditions get bad or it's a nighttime loop and it's like loop 3 or 4, you could see 14 hours. And
Mm.
that's for someone who is finishing. Some of the other
Yeah.
people could see much longer than that.
So what does that look like? Like, what are you bringing with you to make sure that you have enough for that time? Because you were saying you tend not to do gels. So what is it that you're packing in, with you to make sure you have enough?
So a lot of it is tailwind,
Okay.
starting off with it, but then also the little packets
Yeah.
that I can mix at the two water drops.
hmm
And so that the mixing plus what I start with, you're looking at like 12 to 1500 calories just from that. Or if it's a
hmm
longer loop, then I'll bring a water bottle inline filter, like one of the Be Free bottles,
hmm
and that could be even more. So that alone is going to get me probably half the calories that I need.
hmm
And then on top of that, I'll have the supernatural. I'll probably use some Morton's
hmm
next time. That's not something I had tried before the
hmm
last time I did it. And then also, again, your classics: oatmeal cream pies, nutty bars, that sort of thing.
Wait, oatmeal cream pies? Did you just say that? I don't think
Oh,
I that
oh,
one. What's that? Just like an actual pie?
oh, are you serious? Oh,
Oatmeal cream pie? I've
yeah,
never heard of
little
that.
Debbie oatmeal cream pies.
Oh, it's a little Debbie thing. Okay, okay. No,
Yeah.
have
Oh
not
no,
had that.
those are an absolute staple of ultras to me. That's one of the things that I missed most in the UK. They're a
Okay.
bit lacking in the snack cake department there.
Ah,
There's a big gap in the market. I don't understand
yeah.
why
A lot
someone
of
hasn't filled
biscuits.
it yet. Yeah. Um, but no,
Hmm.
oatmeal cream pies are great. They're soft.
I
They're
have to
good
try these.
texture. They're calorie dense. They do well whether it's hot or cold. Um,
Okay.
so
Nice. All
yeah.
right. All right. And then once you're back at the gate, then you're having all of the normal foods, pizzas and whatever else.
Yeah, pizza's definitely my go-to support point food.
Mm-hmm.
They're like I said, I had this run-in with a stomach bug a couple weeks ago, but otherwise, like it's one of the few things for me that my stomach has never said no to. Kind of pizza and ice cream, but
Mm-hmm.
logistically, ice cream is much harder to have even at a support point.
Mm-hmm.
So pizza, chips, the rice pudding, pasta, things like fruit cups and applesauce that are great, but they're not something you would want to carry with you because
Sure.
they're not very calorie dense. So that's going to be an opportunity to fill up on that kind of stuff, sort of the more normal hearty foods, so that your body, who like-minded the first time I tried Barkley, doesn't just absolutely rebel at
Yeah.
having nothing but sugar for 30 plus hours straight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's where I'll say it's also extremely important to have variety. Um, I can't count the number of times that something that I absolutely normally love at some point in an ultra will be repulsive to me. And then at the same time, something that I never, ever would have thought of, someone puts it in front of my face and my body just instantly says, yes, now in my stomach, both
Can you give
hands.
an example of that?
Um, Probably the most interesting one to me is when I did this challenge I called the Grand Round in the UK,
Yes, I saw that
where
video.
I
So
linked
cool.
up the big three classic UK fell running rounds, which are traditionally done in 24 hours each. I cycled between them from Wales to England up to Scotland. And so on that last round um, in Scotland, on the second to last ridge line, so I mean, we're talking nearly 130 hours into it by this point. Going up it, one of my support runners that's with me says, uh, someone that had been kind of doing road sport. His name was Rye, and my support runner says, "Oh, Rye's going to have a surprise for you up here. It's going to be great." And eventually, I get out of him. It's like it's two cheeseburgers from McDonald's, and in my head, I think, "Are you kidding me? I don't want cheeseburgers. I hate McDonald's. The only thing good there is a McFlurry. You want to give me a cheeseburger 130 hours into an ultra? That sounds disgusting." And then I get to the top, and there he is holding that bag. And instantly, I'm just like, yes, both fists. I am downing these in like 2 bites.
Wow.
And yeah, that's about how it went. They went down quick, and
And
I
no
needed
no
it.
GI
I
issues.
No,
That's
I
that
mean,
okay.
I had at that point I was moving extremely slow. Like I said, I was very far into this. My body had nothing left. We had also got nailed by a named windstorm in the Scottish
Oh,
Highlands,
yes. I think I
and
saw you. You were like kind of like limping down.
yeah,
Maybe you
I
couldn't
had
put weight on.
tendinitis.
Oh, that was it.
I
Yeah.
couldn't run down hills at
Oh
all. I could go
gosh.
up, but I couldn't go down. And
Yeah.
so my body was wrecked. I was moving
Yeah.
slow. I had an enormous calorie deficit, and it's just like they went down and my body instantly incinerated them. Just nothing left.
Awesome, awesome. I know we're coming up time, so I just have a couple more questions for you. I'm curious what a typical day of eating looks like for you nowadays. I don't know if you eat with your kids or if you follow any particular pattern of eating. You're working from home, kind of what the routines are, but maybe you can just paint a general picture for us.
Yeah, so I am working from home most days, which makes it, I think, a bit easier to be consistent, um, but also a bit more random, just in terms of, I get a craving and I have the whole cupboard and kitchen and refrigerator there, and so I
Mm-hmm.
can fill it. But typically, I'll get up. I'll have some yogurt with a bit of fruit, maybe a bit of cereal mixed in. and some of it I just get plain yogurt and then squirt in some of that like those little flavor shot things that are like fruit that you can squirt into water. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I do not. What is that?
Various brands have it, but it just comes in these
Like a
tiny
syrup?
little. Just I mean, it's. I started using it when I came back from the UK, and I didn't have squash.
Ah,
But it's
okay.
just these tiny little bottles that you squeeze, and it
Huh.
squirts a little bit into your water and flavors it, like
Oh, interesting.
strawberry lemonade.
Oh,
And so I
okay.
use that to flavor my yogurt instead.
Huh.
I'll have that. I'll have an apple. I'll have my G Fuel, which is I hate coffee, but I need caffeine, and so G Fuel is my chosen vessel for caffeine. It's real
Uh-huh.
big in the esports community.
Okay.
Um, and then lunch, I'll kind of I don't really have a big lunch so much as I kind of have multiple medium-sized snacks throughout the rest of the day. I'll typically have a bowl of oatmeal at some point, mixed with some protein powder, maybe a bit
Hmm.
of maple syrup. The oatmeal was something that I started eating more of when I had the acid reflux issues. I
Hmm. Hmm.
found, at least anecdotally, that it seemed to help a good bit. Um, Typically throw another apple in there, some nuts. I keep some of those the Costco Kirkland mixed nuts things. I
Yeah.
don't know what they put in those, but
A ton of salt. They're delicious.
they don't taste that salty to me, but they're
Really?
so good.
Wait, are they
It's
the
amazing.
salted ones that you get, or do the regular ones?
No, I think just the regular. It's just
Oh,
regular mixed nuts. And yeah, they don't taste salty to me, but somehow they
okay.
taste so much better to me than every other like thing of mixed nuts that I've had.
Costco has some good
Um,
stuff.
but yeah, and I no joke eat 3+ apples a day. I love apples, and that's something that also, at least anecdotally, I found seemed it's a bit counterintuitive because fruits are generally acidic, but I found that apples seemed to help with my acid reflux issues.
Hmm.
So I don't know, that could just be, again, correlation, not causation. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's a huge part of things. Random snacks whenever I get a craving. Do my run sometime in the afternoon. Um, get back and have dinner, and then snack on something before bed, and make my protein uh, powder before bed. I've been using the Vega protein powder
Hmm.
lately, which it's NSF certified for
Yep.
sport. It has tart cherry and some other great things in it. Um, that's also what I add into my oatmeal to
Hmm.
get that extra little boost of afternoon protein. And yeah, that's pretty typical for me. Normally a second cup of G Fuel sometime in the afternoon. So I've got my two things of caffeine, which I
Got
try
it.
to um actually I need to do that soon. I kind of I wean myself off of caffeine
Hmm.
leading into multi-day events because I want to make my body I want to lower my body's caffeine tolerance as much as possible so that when I really need the caffeine to stay awake during a race, it's as effective as possible.
Are you using caffeinated gels, or are you using like the G Fuel?
So I used to rely on caffeine gum.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Um,
that. Hmm.
and I think it's sold on Amazon as like military energy gum, and it comes in these little green packs of 5,
Yeah.
and it hits you a lot quicker
Hmm.
than like actually ingesting caffeine into your stomach. I guess like it enters your bloodstream through your mouth somehow, and it is. It's a much quicker pick me up. I've also tried caffeine pills in the past, but and I do have the Tailwind. Some of their mixes have 25 milligrams of caffeine, but I think next time I'll probably use the Morton
Yeah, they have 100
Again, yeah,
milligram.
it's 100. And just again, in terms of simplifying things and having less things that I have to separately keep track of,
Hmm.
just having one of those every so often. Again, saving those until later in the race when like I
Hmm.
do need them to actively stay awake.
Yeah.
I'll probably use those because that's a pretty nice shot of it, as opposed to again these gels and like the drink mixes and whatnot that are 25 milligrams.
Sure.
Just like what is that going to do for me? Like
Yeah.
that's not going to keep me awake. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And other than Barkley, what else do you kind of have in store for you race wise this year?
So I'm going back to Tour de Giant
Hmm.
in September. So hopefully finally have the race that I know I'm capable of there. And it's just it is just it's my favorite course I've been on and my favorite like race locale in terms of the town of Courmayeur, where it starts and finishes. Like it is just pizza and gelato on every corner, and just this
My fave.
beautiful, beautiful little town sitting there on the Italian side of Mont Blanc. Uh, yeah, I love it. I love the race. I love the experience. And like I said, I still kind of have unfinished business there in terms of I haven't had the type of performance I think I can at that race.
Awesome. Awesome. All
And
right,
and
we're going to Oh
otherwise,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just to say I don't know what my summer holds. Didn't get into Hardrock or Western States, so I'm gonna be a bit flexible there. Maybe do a race, maybe do some FKTs, but we'll have to see.
Does your wife ever crew you, or is she just like not involved in anything that you do athletically?
Well, at most things now, she crews the children, which
Oh
is
yeah, of course.
an absolutely amazing feat as it is. Keeping
Yes,
keeping up with them on her own most of the time.
got it.
So,
That makes sense. All right, we're gonna wrap up with some quick bites questions. So what is your favorite meal or snack when you're in a hurry?
uh, well, meal slash snack. I feel like Pop Tarts straddle that line pretty well. My go-to there is hot fudge sundae, but
Hmm.
there there have been a lot of flavor innovations since while I was in the UK, and I haven't quite caught up on them yet. So I need to do some investigation there to figure out if it's still my favorite flavor.
Got it. And what about when you're not in a hurry?
Oh, um, that's a tougher one because then I'm gonna it's gonna be a different craving. Could be different every day. It could depend on whether I have an easy run or a hard run
Hmm.
later in the day. Um, but I'd say again, an apple definitely fits that bill. Although that again is pretty quick. Um,
Maybe your pizza falls in this category.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Some pizza or ice cream. I never say no to those.
Well, that brings me to my next question. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
That's another one where I just don't know that I can pin down one. I love all of them except. So how about I'll give you my except here instead of my
Perfect.
absolute favorite.
I'll take it.
I don't like crunchy in soft desserts. So like even though I love
Ah.
nuts, I don't want nuts in my ice cream or in my cake or in my brownie.
Mm.
Uh, it's just, and especially when it's something, that is space that would otherwise be taken up by ice cream. That is instead taken up by a nut.
What
So,
about cookies
I
in an ice cream?
cookies in ice cream?
Like a cookies and cream or something.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
So
that's okay.
interestingly, when I was in undergrad at NC State, is when I discovered Cookout, the fast food restaurant that has 50 flavors of shakes, and I made it my goal to try
Oh.
all of them. I got there by first semester sophomore year, but then I discovered they'll let you mix and match any of the flavors. So there's really endless combinations. My key finding from all of this experimentation is that Oreo improves any milkshake flavor. Absolutely.
Oh,
Any flavor,
absolutely.
you can add Oreo to it, and it's even better.
Yep,
But
I'm with you
yeah,
there.
no nuts. I don't like nuts in that stuff, and I don't like
Okay.
mint. I don't like mints in my ice cream or in my desserts. I would rather brush my teeth afterwards instead of during eating my dessert, which also brings me to another good point to make. During these multi-day things, brushing my teeth is huge.
How often do you do that?
Not just for hygiene, but like it prevents cotton mouth, and I feel
Mm,
keeps me better able to keep eating this stuff. Like just my mouth stays in better condition, my stomach
yeah.
stays in better condition, and so at least the normal rhythm of twice a day. But
Mhm.
really, like whenever I come into a support point, or sometimes even carrying a little mini toothbrush with me, and just like if I start to get a feel of cotton mouth or just this kind of caked over nasty taste in my mouth for any reason, just pull it out, and there you go. Either toothbrush or some mouthwash.
Great tip. Great tip. What is your favorite post-race meal or snack? Like, what are you
Pizza and
really
gelato.
craving?
That's easy.
There you go.
Every time. Every single time.
How do you like
It
your
was it
eggs
was one of
cooked?
my
Sorry.
one of my support runners when I finished my
Uh-huh.
Wainwrights. I finished like an hour after the gelato shop uh, closed. But one of my support runners ran ahead, got to the gelato shop to get me like three scoops, and kept it in a cooler until I got there.
Oh,
It
that's
was
epic.
yeah, it was clutch.
Awesome. How do you like your eggs cooked if you eat eggs?
Scrambled, not runny. I can't stand runny eggs, and that was a struggle for me in the UK because they really
Mm,
like their runny eggs, like their Scotch eggs and
yep,
their
yep.
poached eggs, and no,
My pet peeve was like the cold buttered toast. Like it was always cold. I'm like, why is it cold? Like, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
What is your favorite beverage?
So I've really another flavor innovation that happened while I was in the UK is Dr. Pepper and cream soda,
Oh,
which just took two of my absolutely favorite soft drinks ever and mixed them up into one package. So I'm a pretty huge fan of that. I do love my G Fuel,
hmm,
and but if you can count milkshakes as a beverage,
yes.
it would definitely be milkshakes. Or I'm also a huge lemonade fan, like
Got it.
nice tart strong lemonade.
That would probably, do you ever have that like during a run?
Oh
I feel
yeah,
like that could really be
absolutely.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, there's something to me sometimes about just having something like that that's really strong that can just
Yeah.
get rid of cotton mouth, wake your taste buds up, to get things moving again.
Would pickle juice do the same thing for you?
I
I'm
hate
totally different.
pickles.
You hate pickles. Okay, never mind. I feel like it could do the same thing though, just different taste, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Sure, that would
mhm.
work for some people.
Yeah. All right, last question. Top 3 items of gear that are most essential to your active lifestyle.
Whew. Um, yeah. So that this is event dependent as well, but I will say that the Be Free bottles that I mentioned earlier, the
Mhm.
Katahdin Be Free, um, that that was absolutely life changing for me when those came out. And I have no relationship with that company at all, but being able to do these long things that I do, and just carry one of those rather than like iodine tablets or
Mm,
aquamira or these other complex things that I used to have to do to purify water. It's amazing. I've filled those things up in bogs, like pulling out nasty, silty,
ugh.
red bog water in the
Yeah,
UK, and it works.
awesome.
It was palatable, and I didn't get sick. So it's that piece is huge. And then for me, I will go to sponsored relationships here. That the La Sportiva just came out with the Cyclone shoe
Mhm.
this past year, which has been huge for me. It's got one of the boa dials on it, And so again, when I'm out there for multiple days, being
Mm-hmm.
able to just quickly and easily dial that in and out to where I have like a setting for uphill and a setting for downhill, or if my feet start swelling 2 days into it, then I can easily adjust it again. Um, that was huge for me on the Wainwrights. I'll use those at Barkley as well,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a really versatile piece of gear for me. And
Mm-hmm.
then Ultimate Direction used the Mountain Vest, which again, the versatility in terms of being lightweight, but also allowing me to carry all of the things that I need when I go out and do these things, which isn't necessarily just what I need. It's what I might need in
Mm-hmm.
terms of again, I have to think what happens if I sprain my ankle or worse and get stranded on top of this mountain overnight with a weather system rolling in. And so I need to be able to carry gear and food and anything else to get me through that. And so that's something that allows me to do that. But then also, if I'm going out for something shorter, it's not bulky and it's not going to weigh me down.
Yeah, great choices. Well, thank you so much, John. I know we went slightly over. I really appreciate you making the time for me today and for sharing all of your knowledge and experiences with everyone. I'm sure everyone will be excited to listen to this one.
Thanks so much. I enjoyed it. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. And that wraps up our show for today. If you want to give John a follow, you can find him over on Instagram as Random Forest Runner, and he also has a great and very detailed website, randomforestrunner.com. If you enjoyed the show, and I know I already asked this, but once again, please help me keep it going by heading on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts and take a few seconds to give me your honest rating and review. I truly appreciate it. Have a great day and hope you guys tune in next time.